Hi there, Emily Midgett here with you today on the Pink Fresh Studio YouTube channel, and today I have some inspiration that features a ton of ways that you can add interest to your monochromatic cards, including with lots of clear embossing powder. So let's get started with the details. Today I'm going to be working with the Blooming Vines product suite, including the stamps, stencils, and dies, the intricate stitched ovals die, the spirograph die, the leafy branch die, and then I have some of the half-inch ink blending tools, and then I have Lavender and Regal Kiss, Key Lime and Grassy Knoll, which I actually changed those greens later in the video, and then Candy Violet. Now, with monochromatic cards, I like to use lots of different types of paper for different textures. I started by selecting the Candy Violet color, which is one of my favorite colors in the Pink Fresh lineup, and I chose some colored cardstock from my stash to match it. And then I went through my stash and I selected different styles of cardstock with different textures. So you see I had a kind of a matte foil in that same shade of purple. And then I also had a glitter in that same shade of purple as well. And we're going to use all of those with this fun technique that I have been playing with, where I use clear embossing powder over a stenciled image, and then I ink blend over the top of it. So you can see I've stamped the Blooming Vines background, and now I'm laying the different stencils over the top. And I am using the half-inch blending brushes to add some color to those images. And I'm just adding the basic color. I stamped it with that Candy Violet ink because I wanted to do kind of almost a no-line coloring look. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to add those colors over the top of that light purple ink, which it creates almost a no-line coloring look. It's not perfect. But what we're going to do, we're going to heat emboss over the top of those solid areas I've got a blending brush that is dedicated only for embossing ink. And I'm going to place the solid stencil over the top of that blended area that we just created. I've also got my clear embossing powder, and I'm just going to dab a little bit of embossing ink from the refill onto my glass mat. And I'm going to use that blending brush to add that sticky watermark ink over our solid area that we have blended. Now I'm going to take the clear embossing powder and I'm going to place that over where that sticky ink is, and it's going to create a solid, clear embossed image. Because we used that sticky ink only where that stencil went, we've created that solid area, that solid embossed area. So now I am just going to do that exact same technique on the rest of the stenciled areas. I'm using Grassy Knoll for the foliage from the Blooming Vines. And it doesn't create any issues with the purple outline, which I was really happy about. It doesn't like bleed or make kind of a muddy mess or anything like that. And then I did switch it up to olive ink for the details of the fourth stencil, the last stencil, because I felt like the other one wasn't showing up as well as I would have liked it to. So now I'm just using my olive ink and the half-inch blending brush to add all of those details, all of those stenciled details to the foliage itself. Now I'm taking my microfiber cloth and I am cleaning off that excess ink. And because this last stencil has some of the solid areas on it, I am using that embossing ink, the brush with that embossing ink just in that area, just on the stem of the flowers, because that stem is that darker green. So you can see I've covered it in the embossing ink, I've covered it in clear embossing powder, and now I am heat embossing it with my embossing gun. Now we're going to go back to the third stencil, which is the solid stencil for the leaves itself, for the vines. And I'm again just taking that embossing ink brush and dabbing the embossing ink onto the solid images. Now this these stencils were pretty sticky after I was done, but I used some stamp cleaner and my microfiber cloth, and it cleaned right up. There was no issues with residue or anything like that. And this is really fun. This is fun with so many different types of stencils. Anything that has multiple layers where it has a solid base and then a layer over the top, you can do all of your regular stenciling, and then you can add that clear embossing powder. And the beauty is you can do this emboss resist technique. Now, I've talked before in my videos about how I don't like those white outlines of die cuts if I'm going to have a very colorful, vibrant background. So one of the ways that I get around that is by coloring the edges of the die cuts. Well, who wants to spend that amount of time going around with your marker or with your embossing brush or whatever? And so if you cover everything with clear embossing powder, then you can blend easily over and make it's super, super quick to blend over the top. You could do an ombre, you could do all different kinds of techniques, blending techniques over the top, because that clear embossing powder protects your stenciled image. It's such a fun technique, and I've been playing around with it, and I really, really am enjoying it. So I have die cut the intricate stitched ovals die from the solid cardstock, that kind of magenta, purpley, fuchsia cardstock. I've cut the spirograph die from that matte purple foil, and then I cut the leafy branch die from the glitter, the pink glitter cardstock. And when you layer all of those together, you can tell that they are different types of cardstock because they have different textures, because they have different finishes on them. And so that helps to add interest to your monochromatic card. That's one of my favorite. It's like a puzzle for me. Whenever I have a monochromatic card, I want to try and keep that color scheme as true as possible to the vision in my head. And so it's a puzzle for me to try to figure out how to get around using the typical white edges or having the typical white die cuts. And so here I have taken Regal Kiss ink, and I have stamped the greeting, which is from the, I'll link it below. I can't remember which stamp set I used, but I used the Regal Kiss ink. And then I stamped it again with Versamark ink. And then I used clear embossing powder over the top of that. And that created a nice crisp, bold sentiment, and then I die cut it using the coordinating die. So now it's just time to assemble everything. I am using some liquid glue to add that spirograph die to the center of my card front. And because even though they're same color, they will be, this spirograph die cut will be very visible because it is a completely different texture than that background. Adding different textures, adding different types of cardstock with different finishes is what's going to help keep your monochromatic cards from becoming too boring and visually not interesting. So I'm just arranging our clear embossed stenciled die cuts, floral die cuts, in the center of that spirograph die. I added them with some foam adhesive, and I'm just kind of tucking bits of foliage here and there. And now I've taken that leafy branch die, and I'm just snipping off the individual leaves. And that way I can arrange those, kind of tuck them in amongst the different bare spots on my arrangement. So it's a really great way to kind of fill out any floral arrangement that you've created. So I do go back in and add some Twilight Ombre glitter drops. After I had stopped filming, I realized that I hadn't added any sparkle. But here's the finished card. It's so much fun to figure out how you can keep your cards as monochromatic as possible using different techniques like this clear emboss resist. So I hope you enjoyed that technique. I hope you learned something. If you liked this video, please hit the subscribe button so that you can see some more content from us in the future. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.